Hey, everybody. Hey, Amy. Hey, Carol. Hi, Dana. Hi, Jennifer. Irene, Denise, Lynn. Hi. Emmett, so good to see you. I'm going to bring everyone in. Connie's coming in. Carrie. Thanks so much for being here. Okay. Julia is coming in. Emily, Caitlin. Hi, guys. Hi, Gwen. All right. Hi, Sue. Okay. I'm so excited that we are all here today together. Yay. Okay. I'm going to keep my eye on the side just so I can make sure I don't leave anybody behind. Feel free. You can have your, hi, Irene. Good to see you. You can have your video on or off. I will leave that up to you guys. I do like to see, hi, Gwen. It's good to see your face, and Lynn and Emily. Hi. Okay. So, hey, Julia. All right. I want to get into everything because there's a lot I want to cover today. And before I do that, I definitely want to say, be active in the chat, put yourself in the chat, say hi to everybody, tell us where you are, just so we all get a chance to get to know one another a little bit in the time that we're here. I think that sometimes when we are working on our communication, or when we're working on our interactions, or when we're working on, just not feeling great with where we are, sometimes we can feel like we are the only ones in that space. And so I just want to show all of you that you are not the only ones. Look at how many of us there are today together. So you are not alone here. Everyone, we're all working together on the same things. How do we enjoy our day-to-day in our work environments, right? How do we make them feel easier? How do we make it a little less stressful for ourselves? How do we make it, feel like a place that we want to show up to, or meetings that we want to be a part of? And, how do we create space during our days so that we feel like we can take lunch and we can breathe and we can connect with people in the way that we want to. So I'm happy that all of you are here today. I do also just want to quickly introduce Cheyenne. Or Cheyenne can introduce herself. To say hi, let everybody know who you are.
Hi, everybody. I'm the director for the Institute, for the Cane Intentional Communication Institute. And I'm so excited to see everyone's faces and names. But all I really wanted to say is, if you are somebody who registered as bringing a friend, please make sure that your name on your Zoom screen reflects your real name. That way I can track who is who. That way we can get you your special gift cards, okay? So if you don't know how to do that, you just look at your screen and you click the little 3 dots in the top right-hand corner. And then you just say, click rename, and you enter your real name. Most of you, your names look great, but a couple of people, if you need to change your name, please do so, or message me privately. Thank you.
Yay. Okay. Hi, Samuel. Happy to have you here. Okay, so we're just going to dive into everything today. And I will say that if you have any questions, please ask them in the chat. And I will make sure to get to them. I'm going to keep my eyes on the chat as I'm going through the material as well, just so you know. Let me add Sheila before we go. Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen with all of you guys. So I'm thinking we're going to last maybe like an hour and 15 minutes. It's possible it'll be an hour and a half. We'll see how it goes. If you have to pop off, I totally get it. Everything is recorded, so you guys can pop back and catch the recording. Okay. So here we are. We're all here together today, learning, wanting to know more about strategies for how to enjoy our work life a little bit more. So maybe this feels familiar. this feeling maybe of overwhelm or stress, or you're in these interactions at work where you feel sometimes like you're being called out and yelled at, you are just frustrated, you have been really experiencing a lot of pressure lately, a lot more responsibility, taking a lot more, given just kind of the times that we're living in. There's a lot more expectation right now, for, employees to be more efficient, more productive. And it's also kind of blurred because our professional lives and personal lives now are so kind of intertwined with us working from home, a lot of us working from home, and just having interactions that just feel quite stressful. Maybe there's a lot of confrontation going on. Maybe it's that, there are a lot of things that you want to express that you're not expressing. And it's just kind of like enough already, right? Feeling as though you're just exhausted, you're kind of tired. And if any of you feel this way, you can put a 1 in the chat. And what's interesting though, right, is, and what might surprise you, is that you like your work, right? You love what you do. You absolutely adore it, probably. I mean, if you are in a position that, you really looked for, you researched, you found, just, think back to when you first started at the position or where you are, right? Hi, Denise. So you do like your job, right? Or maybe you don't like your job, right? We'll get to that in a minute, but pretty much you like your job, you love your work, you really like what you're doing, you like the responsibility and the tasks and the pressure, right? What you don't like though, possibly, is that you're not really liking how you're handling interactions, right? You're not loving how you're letting situations get to you, or you're feeling misunderstood, or there's this feeling of just like fearing, your colleagues' reactions, your employees' reactions, your employer's reactions. And it paralyzes us sometimes, right? We avoid difficult conversations. We're scared of others' perceptions of us. We're emotionally attached. And it's like there's just overall sense that there's just not enough time, right? So it's not the work itself that we might not be connecting with. It's our relationships within our work environment, or the way that we relate to work itself, right? And the interesting thing about all this, I think, is, well, first, before we do that, let me have you close your eyes. Okay. So go ahead and do that. Just close your eyes and settle into the space. And we'll start to take 3 long, slow, deep breaths. Inhaling slowly and fully through the nostrils, and exhaling deeply. And this just sends a signal to your body to relax a little more. And I want you now to just let your breathing return to its natural rhythm. Just make it an easy breath. And I want you to visualize the most wonderful work day for you. So from the moment you wake up to the moment you rest your head, I want you to see this day unfold in front of you. How do you arrive to work? What are your interactions looking like? How do you feel? And see yourself in this environment. Okay, and let this image go. And just take a inhale and exhale. And blink your eyes open and just come back here. So tell me in the chat, what did you see in this day? How did this day unfold for you? What was different, let's say, about this day than what your day normally feels like? A spring in my step. Everything went smoothly. Warm and positive interactions with coworkers. My desk was tidy. I love that, Carrie. Energetic, Jennifer, laughter, unity. So share confident. Yes. So share with me a little bit about what it feels like now, though. With what I just talked to before, is it feeling this way now? Joy within my interactions with my clients. Now it's feeling heavy. It's feeling hard to breathe. Hard to sleep. Yep. Low morale. Anxious. Yes. I feel like a cow in a sea of dolphins. It's such a great image. Not breathing enough through the day, tired, doubtful. Worried. So this is the opposite, right, of what it is that we want our days to look like. And the reason why this is happening and why it's happening, right? Why we're feeling like that worried, that doubtful, that tiredness, the anxiety, the disconnection, that, the pressure, there's never enough time, all of it is because of patterns that we have created. Okay. So this sheet right here, it reminds me, my son, he's 4.5 and he's really learning about patterns, and everything right now is all about pattern. So this is what's been happening up to this point, right? Is that we have created patterns in the way that we connect with others at work. We've created patterns with how we engage with our colleagues, with our employers, with our employees. And it's predictable, right? So we know, the next in this second row is going to be a blue balloon, right? This is just unconscious, though. All of this pattern that we have been really perfecting since we started working is something that we've been perfecting without us even knowing, because it's unconscious. It's just something that's happening in the background, right? And it's happening because we've never been taught to understand really that we have power over pattern. So what might be happening right now, this is what I call like pattern 1, okay? So you might be asked to take on more responsibility at work. You might be asked to stay late. You might be asked to, go without a pay raise, lead a meeting, collaborate more with other people. And when these things happen, you start going into kind of like this talk to yourself mode of just, I don't want to do this, but I should do this. I really don't want to let anybody down. People are going to think I'm lazy. It's not that big of a deal. I'm just going to let everybody know that I'm going to be late. And so you say, yes, I can do it, right? And you say, yes, I can to pretty much everything. And there's this song that's like, yes, I can, indeed, I can. And that's what this reminds me of, this pattern. It's just like, everything is like, yes, I can do that. Sure, I can do that. Not a problem. I've got that. I have enough time for that. But inside you're like, I don't have enough time for that. This is really going to be hard for me to, to pull off. And I'm more stressed than I was before, feeling a lot more pressure than I was before, definitely not going to be sleeping a lot more, but I'm going to say yes, right? And so what happens at like performance reviews or, when you're getting feedback is like, this person, they can handle anything we throw their way, right? They are always up for taking on more. We can rely on them. They're like the get things done person. They just get things done. And they get along well with everybody, and they're a great listener, right? These are things that come up if we are kind of like a, yes, I can do this. And yes, I can do this. It's okay to be a, yes, I can do this person, right? It's more if this is becoming like a habitual pattern where we are constantly saying yes to everything, when within us, it's not okay for us, right? So we're starting just to start to be aware a little bit of this, okay? Does anybody identify themselves as kind of like a yes, I can person? If you do identify yourself as a yes, I can person, put number 1 in the chat. And so the issue is really when this becomes like the norm, right? Lots of ones here, right? I used to be like a 1, 2, like a 1 as well, I should say. And so, instead of expressing ourselves, we just kind of like push it down and we're like, it's fine, because perception is really important if we're in pattern 1. And so what happens, that's on, more like the professional level, what's coming back at you, but what's happening on a personal level when we are stuck in this pattern is we get exhausted, we burn out, we feel taken advantage of, we feel underappreciated, we vent about it at home, and we pretend like everything's fine though when we get to work, right? And we vent about it to colleagues, and that's how we bond with people. But overall, we're pretty unhappy because we are actually not, our needs are not being met at work, because we're not, well, there's many reasons why it's possible that we're not expressing ourselves, right? But the bottom line is that we're not feeling comfortable to express ourselves, right? Pattern number 2 is the reactive pattern. So you're being asked to take on more, same ideas, right? Leading at meetings, collaborating more with others, whatever the ask might be. And instead of, going to the like, yes, I can place, we go to, I have so much to do already. They're never going to pay me what I'm worth. I'm never going to be able to get everything done. They can't take advantage of me like this. Who do they think they are? And we go directly like outward, right? So then we move into reaction. And so we start lashing out. We start getting passive aggressive. We become really dismissive potentially. We get accusatory with people. We feel a lot of anger, right? We feel frustrated. Maybe we end up lying. We dodge situations. We shut down. We make excuses, right? And then what we end up seeing in kind of performance reviews is we're being asked more to be more collaborative, more team player. The person, they may think that we're not confident in our decision making, that we talk in circles, that we're unable to focus, that we have challenges connecting and communicating with other people, that we seem unsure of our needs, that we're way too direct, that we're hard to teach. And so we start seeing this type of feedback in the workplace. If you are a number 2, put this in the chat. And so what ends up happening is that on a personal level, we just feel misunderstood, and we feel really unheard, and we feel like, why should I even say anything at all, right? We're not being taken seriously. We don't feel respected. We're questioning our voice. We're questioning our opinions, and just constantly in this state of feeling like we're saying things that we don't mean, and then we have to backtrack, or we're saying too much and nobody's understanding what it is that we're saying, right? So with pattern number 2, it's really all about somebody says something, and instead of us being able to, take what somebody says and respond, instead we just react right away, right? It just comes right out. And then what I'd say is kind of the third pattern is the receiver pattern. And this often happens more with like employers, or like those in leadership positions, where you're asking for something to be done, you're giving a performance review, you're having difficult conversations, and then you're met with those 2 patterns, right? You're met with a, yes, I can take this on, it's not a problem, or you're met with a reactive pattern, and you go into like, I'm putting too much responsibility on my team, I'm burning them out, I'm the worst boss in the world, I can't communicate with them very well, I'm not really able to connect with those that are, working for me, and I'm letting them down, right? Going into that spiral. And then that leads to like the low morale that we were just talking about, right? Like the low engagement, employees wanting to leave or quit or just not show up. And, kind of a disconnect really between the vision and the execution. So inefficiencies start to pop up. So this is like the receiver pattern. If anybody feels like this is them, put a number 3 in the chat. Okay. So this is, this also is for those in these positions, the majority of the time who are in leadership positions, they do feel nervous to ask for something to be done. They are scared to give performance reviews. They do dread having difficult conversations and getting into confrontation, right? Because again, it's this pattern of being the receiver and being the one to hold everything, yet not necessarily know how to quote unquote fix it or solve it or talk to it. Okay. And the great thing about all this, these patterns, is that that's what they are. They're patterns, which means patterns can change, patterns can be broken, right? Patterns can be reset. And so all we have to do to really feel good at work is to create new patterns of interacting, right? For us to stop feeling tired or, doubtful or anxious or having low morale or not sleeping at night or, really heavy and insecure, the way out of that, the way through that is to create new patterns of interacting, right? So by doing this, this is truly how we begin to enjoy our work more. Okay. Because no matter which pattern you fall into, it's all about learning how to express yourself so that you're heard, so that you feel connected, so that you feel listened to, so, that you feel valued and appreciative. And the only way for that to start really happening is by creating new patterns of interacting. All right. So today, what I want to get into is I want to share with you guys, the 4 strategies to really change your old patterns. Then I want to share a bit about the obstacles to implementing the strategies. And then I'm going to talk to you guys about how to create new patterns of interacting, which is truly by applying to the Kane Intentional Communication Training Program. So before I get into all that, I just quickly want to introduce myself to you because some of you might not know who I am. I'm Cynthia Kane. I'm the CEO and founder of the Kane Intentional Communication Institute. I am the author of How to Communicate Like a Buddhist, Talk to Yourself Like a Buddhist, and How to Meditate Like a Buddhist. I'm also a certified meditation and mindfulness instructor and breathing instructor. And I have helped more than 60,000 people now become more responsive instead of reactive, really through online courses, our flagship training program, books, and my workshops. And I really enjoy what I do. I really love it. There was a period, which I'm going to talk to before, where I did not like what I do or like the interactions I was having. But I really do love what I do, and I get excited to have difficult conversations, which is a far cry from where I used to be. I used to really just hate confrontation. I was extremely passive aggressive, and I had a really difficult time expressing myself. And I do this practice and these strategies that I'm sharing with you every day. Like I am a normal person, same stress, same fears, same doubts, all of the things. But these practices and these strategies are what really keep me in those states less, right? Like, so I'm not in them as much during the day as I used to be. For those who already know that they want to apply to the training program, you can just go ahead and do that. Cheyenne will put the link in the chat for those who know about it and are already ready. Okay, so right now, this is what I do, right? Like I teach people how to change the way that they interact so that they can enjoy their day-to-day more, their day-to-day relationships, so that they can express themselves more clearly, consciously, and concisely, right? And I didn't used to be in this place, right? I got here in a really roundabout way. And I used to dread interactions. I used to get scared of asking for raises. I used to get very nervous to say no or to not take on more. I was really the yes, I can pattern of things. I had probably gone on hundreds of interviews without ever landing a job when I had first gotten out of college. I had a lot of anxiety and my mind would just kind of run all over the place. I stayed at the same job for about 13 years because I was just scared to ask for a raise. And every time I tried, I was just kind of pushed off. I was never really heard or seen there. I got very passive aggressive with the people that I worked with and was very resentful of the work that I was given. I was not able to express what I wanted or needed, right? And what was happening was other people's opinions really started to matter way more than mine. And I ended up starting to compare myself to other people that I would work with. and just get even more down on myself for, feeling inadequate. And that would lead to becoming like argumentative and having a really difficult time taking criticism and feedback. So I was not in a place where I could change the situation or feel good at work in the jobs that I was in, because I didn't have the tools or the practices or the strategies, right? And so what changed for me really was, this is my first love, Mauricio. And when I was 30 years old, he passed away unexpectedly. And my whole world changed in that moment. I really just realized then that, if I wanted to find a way to enjoy being here, I was really going to have to do it on my own. And that led me, to read a lot of books, to go on retreats, to do seminars, all these things. And what it led me to, and I found, was the elements of right speech in Buddhism, which are tell the truth, don't exaggerate, use helpful language, and don't gossip. And when I heard these, it was like, this is it. This is the piece that I need to start changing the way that I live in the world, because everything I was learning was about communication, but I couldn't figure out what I needed to change with my communication. And so after I heard this, I was like, I can do this. This is totally possible, totally doable. But then I woke up the next day and had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea how to actually do this. It sounds great in theory, but how do you actually start? And so this really became my lifestyle experiment. And I created this practice called the Cane Intentional Communication Practice, which is really being able to speak in a kind, honest, and helpful way. And it completely shifted the way that I lived in the world. And I started teaching it, and it started changing the way that others were connecting in the world, right? In their relationships, in their most important relationships. And so during this time, I was a book editor, and I was editing computer books. And I was just noticing how much I could not stand my job. Like, I felt very overworked. I was very undervalued. I felt underpaid. I felt very taken advantage of with my time. And, most of my interactions with others on the team were really about our boss, and how rude he was, and how hurtful he was, and how hopeless it felt for us in a lot of ways, and how helpless we felt in a lot of ways. And, I remember being on meetings, and I couldn't believe the way that he was interacting with other people, and how nobody on the calls or in the meetings was able to talk to it, or nothing would change, right? Even if one of my managers would say something, nothing ever shifted, right? And I wasn't in an empowered place there. And I felt very similarly to, what you guys have shared here in the chat. And I knew that I could either leave or I could stay. But I didn't have the tools to stay and enjoy, right? So I thought I should just leave. But then once I started this practice of communication and this lifestyle experiment, I started applying what is now the Cane Intentional Communication practice into my day-to-day. And everything became so much easier, because I was doing the same job, but it felt so much better. Like, I felt so much better doing it. And it was actually the practice was what brought me to leave my job, because I then had enough confidence to actually ask for what it was that I needed, and be told that that wasn't possible. And then for me to be able to accept that as reality, and choose in a very empowered way to say, okay, they can't rise to meet me. I need to find something else. Right. And then over and over, I had to really apply these strategies and this practice to my work life, to be able to not get mired down in the doubt and the anxiety and the stress and the insecurity. And, then once I started to build my own team, really understanding it from this perspective as well. So today I'm going to share with you, only just a handful of strategies, but I think they're going to be game changers for you, to really help you shift into, enjoying work a little bit more. And it's really, I think we see work in isolation sometimes, when it's truly a part of us as a whole, right? So if work is affecting you, what is affecting you at work is coming into your personal life, right? It is affecting your personal life as well. So I don't know if all of you are seeing that too. You can put it in the chat. But most of us don't just leave the work issues at work. We bring them home, and they can also start to creep in and affect our relationships at home as well. Okay, so the first strategy I want to talk to is really about resetting your pattern, right? We talked about these patterns. And so to reset your pattern, one of the biggest things that needs to change is your purpose. Right now, there may not be a purpose to the way that you're interacting, right? Right now, it might just be that you are, in these day-to-day situations, and there's no direction. So what we want to do is we want to give it purpose. So we need there to be a reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists, right? So the purpose in this context is really to help yourself and your team or your boss or your coworkers suffer less. So when you're saying yes, when you really aren't able to do work, you're suffering, right? Suffering here is like anxiety, discomfort, embarrassment. It's anything that really you have been sitting in for a very long time, right? And when you say yes to something and you really can't take it on, you're suffering. And then your team and your boss, everyone within the department does as well, because the work might not actually be your best, right? You might be too tired. You might not be as efficient. You might be complaining to others and bringing morale down, right? So, and if you're reacting in these situations, you're hurting yourself because you want to be showing up differently, right? You know that the way that you are expressing yourself is so different than your insides. And that might be meaning that you're, losing connection with your team and your colleagues and your clients, and that can bring about suffering to them as well. So we want to start to look through our interactions through this lens of creating purpose, right? There is a reason why you are talking. So right now, let's just do this. Let's identify your pattern. So something happens, someone says something, the situation happens at work, and then what is your pattern? Okay, so we talked about 3 patterns. Pattern 1, which is the yes, I can do it. I'm totally okay. Yes, I can. Indeed, I can. And we talked about the reactive pattern. And we've talked about the receiver pattern. So of those 3, are you one of them? If you're not any of those 3, then I want you to identify what is your pattern, right? So when something happens that is upsetting or bothers you, or where you want to say something, but or where you want to say something, what do? Right? I want you to start getting familiar with what your actual pattern is. You can put it into the chat too. And if you're a pattern 1, 2, or 3, you can just reiterate that again in the chat. Okay. And I want you then to also, number 2. So tell me then what happens to you, your personal outcome, right? So take time to understand the root cause of being upset. Yeah. So Lynn, does that mean you get stuck in there? 1 and 2. So do you get stuck in thinking about what you said, what happened, what the issue is? And so it leads you to not take action? Okay. Yes. These are all yeses. Okay. Because sometimes a pattern can also be that, right? Where we just shut down and we don't engage, and it's almost like we just ignore the situation and we kind of walk away, right? Like mentally we can walk away. But I want you to get familiar with what your pattern is, right? And then what happens? So what does it feel like for you when this happens, right? If you're taking on more work, then are you exhausted? Are you more worried? Are you more stressed? If you're reacting and, words are just coming out of your mouth, and are you running it over in your mind over and over again afterwards? Are you trying to figure out the best way to fix the situation? Are you, and you can put some of this in the chat too. Okay. But I'm hoping that you're writing this stuff down. Because this is really, it's important, right? For us to be able to change the pattern. First, you have to identify and know what your actual pattern is, right? And every pattern is going to be different, though it will fit into likely the 3 patterns that I mentioned before. It's either you go into yes mode where everything is fine, or you go into reactive mode, or you go into receiving mode, which is more feeling like a helpless mode. Yeah. Okay. So yeah. So if it's not important, you let it go. And if it's important, you persist. Great. Alienated from colleagues. They don't know me, even if I say yes all the time. I feel stressed and overwhelmed and meditate over my behavior and how to fix. Yep. Great. I want you guys to just keep thinking on that. Okay. Now though, I want you to pay attention to sensation in the body. So something is happening. Someone says something, right? What happens in your body? Do you start sweating? Do you start, does your heart start beating really quickly? Do you start swallowing a lot? Do your palms start, tingling? Starting to get a sense of what happens. You turn red. Turn red. Sometimes, people's mouths can go dry. My heart hurts, pain in chest, want to cry, body soreness, tense shoulders. Yes, right? So all of this is super important for us to be able to reset the pattern, okay? Because this is what you'll need to be able to reset the pattern, okay? Because where before, you're just going from something happens and someone says something to, just saying, yes, that's fine, or, going into a reaction. What we want to be doing is slowing everything down so that we can start to be the ones in control of how we're connecting in that moment, right? And the way to do that is for us to pay attention to the sensation in the body, because that is really the cue for us to know that we are about to say yes and take on more than we need to, or we're about to lash out or get dismissive or go passive aggressive. Okay. And then once we know that sensation in the body, then the next piece of this is the new pattern, which really is the new purpose, right? So now you have the sensation in the body, which you're aware of. And once you know that, you can be able to say, okay, my purpose now is to help myself and my team and my boss and my colleagues and, everyone in this instance suffer less. So to do that, that creates a completely different outcome, right? That creates more of the outcome of what you felt before when we did the visualization, right? Of more like joy and ease and a spring in your step, everything going smoothly, energy, laughter, unity, all of that is created once we kind of run it through this new pattern. So the new pattern would look like, something happening, you notice the sensation in the body, what it's telling you, and then for you to remind yourself of basically coming to these interactions, being kind, honest, and helpful, right? Coming to these interactions, helping yourself and others suffer less. Just by going through that filter, it will change your outcome, right? Okay. Does this make sense? Can you put a 1 in the chat if this makes sense to you guys? 1. Okay, great. Okay, so this is the first strategy. So resetting your pattern, okay? And you can take more time to do this, but this is what the new pattern will look like as opposed to what it looked like before, Okay. Strategy number 2, you're going to reset your self-talk. So language that I'm interested in paying attention to is the negative self-talk. So that's language that makes anybody feel less than, bad, like a failure, right? Stupid, guilty. It's really important that we start to pay attention to the negative self-talk. So some of you might know Dr. Masaru Emoto, and he dedicated his life really to the study of water. I am so in the sun, and I really would like to change that outcome, and I'm not sure that's possible. Let me see. Kinda, sorta. There we go. You guys get to see the beautiful shadows behind me. So Dr. Masaru Emoto, he dedicated his life to the study of water, and what he found, so fascinating, but he froze water from pure and polluted sources, and then he looked at them under a microscope, and what he found was that the polluted water were more like blobs under these microscopes, and then the pure water formed these like beautiful crystallized patterns. And what his team did, they did this experiment where they put different words on different jars of like, thank you, you're an idiot, I hate you. They put ugly images on there, and they put them into different glasses of distilled water, and then they flash froze them, and they looked under a microscope to see if anything happened with the water. And what they found was that the water that was exposed to more positive, loving words and images, they produced, more like these beautiful, complete snowflake crystals. And then the jars and the words that were like the "you disgust me" and "you fool" created more of what the polluted water looked like. And that to me is interesting, though what I think is really fascinating is that what they found was that they could take loving words and intentions, and you could transform the polluted water back into these beautiful crystals, right? And so why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because we are 70% water, and how we communicate with ourselves can change. It can change the chemical makeup of who we are and also how we are in the world, right? And it means that even if up until this point you've been experiencing a lot of stress and overwhelm and not being able to sleep at night and, burnout and pressure and all of that, it means that there is a way for us to shift that, because a lot of that is created by the way that we talk to ourselves. So if we've talked to ourselves in a way in the past that creates more of that discomfort, we can change that, and it's reversible. And so research has really shown, well, the National Science Foundation published an article talking about thoughts per day. The average person has about 12 to 60,000 thoughts per day. 80 of those are negative, and 95% are exactly the same repetitive thoughts as the day before, and about 80% are negative. So if you think about that, we are just walking around talking to ourselves in really harsh ways the majority of the time, every day, saying the same verses over and over again, right? And there was a 1985 study. I don't know if I put it in here actually. I didn't. But basically what it showed was that your internal dialogue really affects your blood pressure, and it can alter the biochemistry of your tissues. And so, we see this. I mean, just think about like on a regular day, like when it's raining and you look out the window and you could be telling yourself, gosh, this is such a horrible day. It's dreadful outside. And then your day is pretty much tinged in that dread, right? Or you could look at the window and you'd be like, wow, super refreshing. The farmers must be delighted. Or, the seeds are so happy right now, or however you might look at it, right? But that would completely change the way that you show up for the day, right? It's no longer a dreadful day. It's just a day with rain, right? And I think there's another example of like people lying in bed and it's raining, and, for one person, it's like, it's just rain on the, they're just hearing rain on their roof. And then another person, they're like completely devastated because it's their wedding day. But you could shift that, like if you start talking to yourself differently, you get the opportunity to move yourself into more of a place of empowerment. And I'm not talking about, well, let's get into this real quick. So just to talk about what some negative self-talk looks like, because sometimes students will be like, I don't talk to myself negatively. I'm going to go in this area. Oh, this is so, here we go. Okay. I don't talk to myself negatively, but the truth is that we do it in such subtle ways that we don't even know that we're doing it. So I want you to kind of get familiar right now just with the ways that you talk to yourself that are hurtful. And you can put them in the chat because, we do it. I do it. I mean, I just did it the other night too. I was like, am I going to get all this stuff done that I have to get done before I leave for the weekend? I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. That's negative self-talk, right? That's making me feel like it's not possible and that I don't have the opportunity for things to be different. So if you're saying things like, I'm never going to meet that deadline, you're creating more stress and making work less enjoyable. I'm not here to say that your work is not stressful, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I want you to pay attention to is that you have the ability to change your relationship to that stress by changing the way you talk to yourself about it, right? Because stress is everywhere. So we're going to bump up against it. It's more a matter of, do we let it drive us? Do we let it be the dictator of how we connect with others or how we connect in our work? Or are we able to find a new way to relate to it so that it no longer takes center stage, but we do, right? So if you're saying things like, I'm never going to meet that deadline, or, I'm just not very creative, right? Saying these things over and over again, we're just repeating the same patterns within our interactions, because the way we talk to ourselves dictates how we interact with others. So if we are in the like, yes, I can pattern of things, the way that we're talking to ourselves keeps us in that place of thinking that we can't show up differently, or we can't ask for what it is that we want, or we can't say no, right? So if we start changing the way we're talking to ourselves, it's possible that our interactions with others are going to change, that we're going to start to feel like I can actually say that, I have too much on my plate right now, and that it would be better for me to do this project in 2 weeks. And for them to come back and say, well, that's not possible. And then for me to be able to say, well, this is what I can do, right? So saying things like that, or, I'm going to let my team down. I never know what to say. He never takes what I have to say seriously. This is the way it is. I can't do anything about it. Are any of these sounding familiar to you guys? If any of them are sounding familiar, can you put a 2 in the chat? I never get a break. I hate my job. It's going to be another one of those days. I just know it won't work. So there's no use, right? So we have to start talking to ourselves differently if we want to experience our workplace differently. Okay. And so how do we do that? This is not about being like rosy, posy, butterflies, buttercream, bananas. This is about real objective self-talk, right? We're not talking about like putting a positive where a negative was. We're not talking about pretending we are like, these unbelievable creatures, although we are unbelievable creatures, but you know what I mean? Like, we're not exaggerating our state of things. We're really wanting to get to this place where we can talk to ourselves in a kind, honest, and helpful way, like we would a good friend, right? And so this is what we're after. So instead, what it begins to look like is I'm never going to meet that deadline. If I choose to dedicate time and attention to this, I can make it work, right? That's way more objective, way more kind, honest, and helpful than I'm never going to meet that deadline. Because the truth is, never is not a possibility, right? We can't always do something the same way all the time. And always and never are those words that just keep us stuck in that absolute language where we don't have any room to grow, right? I'm just not creative. Today, I'm going to practice my creativity, right? We want to start seeing where we're limiting ourselves and seeing instead where we can help ourselves. How can we be helpful to ourselves instead of how can we be hurtful, right? That's really what it is. And it's not about having like specific scripts, right? It's not about me saying, okay, if you say this or if you say that, it's about you knowing what is helpful to you, right? And what is hurtful to you. And so it's time to get really honest on if you're being hurtful to yourself, which can be hard to do. I'm going to let my team down. I never know what to say. I'm going to do my best for my team and plan what I'm going to say, right? He never takes what I have to say seriously. What I have to say is necessary and what I have to say is valuable. That's my favorite one ever. And for most of you who follow my work, you know that this phrase is my favorite. It's my jam. This is the way it is. I can't do anything about it. I am choosing to trust that everything is working for my greatest good, right? I never get a break. I hate my job. I have more than enough time to complete all that I need to with ease and grace. I appreciate the opportunity to work. Does this require thought? Yes, it does, right? Is this one of the reasons why we don't talk to ourselves in an objective way? Yes, because it's so much easier for us to just go with what we know, which is speaking to ourselves in a way that is hurtful, because we've not ever been taught to talk to ourselves differently, right? We've not really ever been taught to talk to anybody. It's going to be another one of those days. Today, I get the opportunity to begin again. Every day is a new day. Who knows what will happen, right? Yes, you can get copies of the slides. Yes, okay. I just know it won't work. There's no use. I don't know if this will work. Let's find out, right? Like, you know, I think of like the caged bird, you know, like we want to open the door. We want to let the birds out. We are the birds. Pay attention to the language that is keeping us feeling like we are stuck, right? That's the language we want to start to play with, to open up, okay? So how do we do it? To change the negative self-talk to objective self-talk, what you're going to do is you're going to start paying attention to your language, and you're going to ask yourself, is the way I'm speaking to myself causing me more stress and anxiety? And instead, can I speak to myself in a kind, honest, and helpful way, right? Specifically when it comes to work, specifically when it comes to, projects, specifically when it comes to time, specifically when it comes to your colleagues, your boss. I mean, self-talk is not just, the obvious of us being like, you missed a deadline, you're so stupid. It's really way more subtle than that. I can't believe he thinks that I'm not able to finish this project, or, she always looks at me like I have no idea what I'm saying. That's all negative self-talk. Okay. So that's strategy number 2. We want to start really paying attention to the negative self-talk and reset the negative self-talk. Strategy number 3, we have to make friends with fear. Okay. This is like so important to enjoying your work life, because fear is what holds us back from expressing ourselves, right? So we fear other people's reactions. We don't ask for what we need. We don't stand up in meetings. We don't share our opinions. Or we have at some point and it's backfired on us. And so there's fear now of us even, showing up in the same way, or even trying and showing up in a different way. We fear hurting other people's feelings. We feel hurting someone. We fear saying the wrong thing, or that, there's no way back from it if we do say something that isn't quote unquote right. And this makes it really hard it makes it really hard to enjoy your work environment. It makes it really hard to advance in your career, right? If we don't feel comfortable sharing or speaking up or having discussions or being around, a table and letting other people express their opinions, even though they may be different than yours, or you expressing your opinions and, seeing how other people engage with it, and being able to be in those, in those situations that can feel sometimes heightened and very stressful, and instead be able to relax into the fear, right? Like, can you feel the fear and the discomfort? Can you allow it to be there and be okay, right? Is it possible? These are the questions we want to start asking ourselves. And so when I'm talking about fear, I'm talking really about like, even just the fear of being able to change the way that we communicate, right? Our fears and beliefs about saying the wrong things, making things worse, needing to have the last word to be able to win a conversation. And again, this comes back a little bit to the purpose that we talked about before, thinking really about like your purpose right now when you do have interactions with people. What is the purpose of your interactions right now with people? Is it to win the conversation? Is it to be like the first? Is it to be heard? Really starting to put your attention there to see why are the words coming out of your mouth, right? Fearing that we won't be able to handle a difficult reaction. So right now, reactions, tell me in the chat, do you guys fear reaction? Like what reactions could be? Yes. And do some of you feel like not speaking, like not expressing yourself, one of the reasons you don't express yourself is because of the reaction? Yes, at times, yes. Okay. And if not, that you're scared it will be reactive. Okay. And if not, I'd love to just know what do you fear at work, right? Like what are you holding yourself back from at work? Because that's where your fear is, right? If you're not expressing yourself, you have a fear around expressing yourself, right? If you are, not, if you have expressed yourself before and you're being quiet, then you have a fear of expressing yourself, right? They're both the same. But I want you to see if you can look at where are you holding yourself back, because where you're holding yourself back is where there's fear. So what is really the resistance, right, for you when it comes to expressing yourself? Tired of expressing myself and having a result in no meaningful change. Yes, right? We can have the same conversations over and over again and nothing changes. And so it feels like, what is the point, right? I'm not responsible for other people's reactions. Yes, 100%. Being ignored as if I said nothing, not being taken seriously. Feel the need to check info before speaking. Yeah, so having the same conversations over and over again and not feeling like you're being heard, and just fearing like that same reaction, so normal and so common. I just want you to know that. And the great news is that it's possible to start having different types of interactions where you're not having the same conversations anymore, where you're really able to create closure within a conversation. And it is possible. Okay. Once we start getting into types of interactions and, how to speak so that other people can really hear you. So right now, a lot of this, right, it's like in our minds, it builds up pretty big. And it reminds me of like when I was younger and my sister and I shared a room, and my sister was really scared of monsters under the bed and in the closet. And I would have to check under the bed and in the closet, and she would have to fall asleep. Like I had to fall asleep after her. She's older than me. And I would check the closet for the monsters. I would check underneath the bed for the monsters. But this is what it reminds me of. It's fear and fear of people's reactions, or fear of saying things wrong, or fear of having the same conversation again and again, or, being ignored, and those types of things in our minds. It is so big, right? It is like this big monster. Okay. We know that monsters aren't real though, guys, right? And we know that we can go looking for them and we're not going to find them, but we can create beautiful stories about them, right? We can create stories that make them feel real in our minds. And so what often happens is that we have this image of these conversations that we need to have, of, the types of interactions that would move us more towards the place we want to get to in our work. And they're too scary. The reality, though, is that once you have them, you realize that they're not scary at all. And I'm looking at Julia right now because Julia had a really scary conversation. And before she had a conversation, it was like the biggest thing in her, eyesight. Like it was everywhere. But then she had it and she realized it really wasn't that big of a deal. Right. So it's really starting to pay attention to what are you turning into something more than it is, right? And when we feel fear, what we do is basically we go into isolation, like we move into isolation. With fear, like instead of leaning into and getting the outcome that we desire or the vision, we just isolate ourselves, right? We kind of shut down. We focus on past mistakes, which basically derails our present decisions. When we feel fear, we downplay our wants, we downplay our needs, and we downplay what we have to say, really keeping us from expressing ourselves and getting our needs met, and keeping us from feeling capable and confident. Okay. So how do you stop fear? Okay. How do we use fear? So we use fear as an excuse. We use it to remain the same. We use it as a crutch. Okay. Start paying attention to how you're using fear to hold yourself back from enjoying yourself at work. Right? Are you using it as an excuse? Are you using it to remain in the same place? Are you using it as a crutch? And I know that these aren't easy questions necessarily to answer, because they do require us to really be honest with ourselves, though that is truly what's necessary for you to start to know even what it is that you need to be able to enjoy yourself at work, right? That clarity is what we need, because once you have clarity, then you can move, right? So what to remember is that your desire has to be bigger than your fear, meaning like your want for, let's say your calendar is like full to the brim with meetings, right? And you really want an hour or two for lunch each day. Your desire for that time has to be bigger than your fear of blocking off those times on your calendar, right? Like your want for that quiet time has to be more important than the fear. Same thing, your dreams have to be bigger than your fears. That's the only way, right? So if you have a dream of, advancing in your career, or getting that promotion, or moving to, another organization, or interviewing for this other position, your fear of, the interview process can't be bigger than your dream of being there. Your dream of being there has to be bigger than your fear, or else the fear will prevent you from even making it through, right? Okay. So here's the other thing to remember. Fear is really showing up as an invitation for more. When fear comes in, it's because there is more possibility for you. It's because you're seeing that you either want more, you feel you deserve more, you feel like you need more, or you feel like you could be, doing something differently, but it's coming up because there's something for you likely to talk to, or something that is showing you that more is possible for you, right? Like more free time at work is possible for you. Less stress is possible for you, right? Less worry, less pressure, less, less, chit chat, less gossip, like all the things that fear is showing up around for you. It's your invitation to think about what more is here for me, right? Okay. So how do you then stop your fear from overtaking you and holding you back from enjoying your work? You notice it, you notice the fear, you talk to it. You're like, hey, fear, how's it going? Totally see you. I know, like you can do this, like you can be here, but I want you to know that I've got this and we're good. And I'm just going to go in another direction now. Okay. And I tell my students, like, you can put it into an object. This is like the largest crystal that I have on my desk, but like you can just be like, hey, fear, what's up? Totally see you. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate you. You've helped me so much, but I don't need you anymore. I'm ready to move in a different direction. And then you just put it down. Okay. So I want you to start talking to your fear, like start becoming friends with your fear. Instead of fearing your fear, see if you can become friends with it, right? Let it be there. Let it be a part of you. And see if instead of, it being something that is dictating how you're interacting or how you're viewing things, see if you can just ride alongside it. Okay. And to get through any, like, I like this quote, so I put it in here. To get through an impossible situation, you don't need the right reflexes of a Grand Prix driver, the muscle of a Hercules, or the mind of an Einstein. You simply need to know what to do, right? So when your fear comes, now you know what to do. Just notice it, talk to it, let it know you're going in another direction, and then you move in that direction, okay? Okay. And this is the other part to fear. You have to move your attention. So when you start to notice that you're going down that rabbit hole, like the doubt, the anxiety, the fear, just start seeing if you can talk to yourself and be like, what's possible for me? You want to focus more on what is possible for me? What's possible for my company? If I have this conversation or if I have this interaction, right? What is the possibility of this action that I fear, right? How can this move me more in the direction that I want to go, as opposed to focusing and stewing and simmering in what we don't know to be true, right? The fear of it, of what it's preventing you from. But let's see if we can see it as something that's actually moving you forward. What does this move me and my company closer to if I have this conversation, or if I, do this specific action, or if I create more time in my calendar, or, if I, only have 2 group calls a month as opposed to 8, right? Every time we start talking to ourselves in a way that scares us from having a conversation, or that pushes us away from doing what we know is best for us and what we need, then what we want to do is we want to move our attention to what is possible with the conversation or the action. Okay. Is this helpful? Can you put like a 2 in the chat if this is helpful? Okay, good. Okay, the other thing with fear, you're going to basically remind yourself that people are designed to react. Okay, that we are human. We are meant to react. Okay, it's from, ages and ages ago when we were being chased by the tigers, right? It is just in our chemical makeup. We are designed to react. So no matter how you engage with somebody, they are going to react in a specific way. Okay. Know that you can handle whatever reaction you receive because you don't have to engage with their reaction. The only reason why reaction can become so difficult is because we engage with it, we fight the reaction, or we take it personally. But see if in those moments, can you allow the other person to have their reaction without it becoming yours, right? And again, these are all questions we want to ask ourselves in those moments so that we can detach and we can separate. And then really understanding what we're responsible for within a conversation is really helpful here. And I think it was Samuel who mentioned in the chat before about understanding, like, really that I'm not responsible for other people's reactions. It's so powerful when we really understand that, right? When we start to understand that the only thing that we are responsible for is really the health of the conversation. And what we are responsible for, like individually, we're responsible for the words that are coming out of our mouths, how we're using silence, our facial expressions, our nonverbal communication, how we're reacting. The other person is responsible for how they're talking, how they're reacting, how they're using silence, how their facial expressions are. And the only thing we have in common is the health of the conversation, right? That's it. And so we want to put our focus on that too, especially when we get into these fearful places. Okay. And an affirmation you can say is, it's safe for me to change the way I interact and communicate, like, with those in my life, even though I have fear. Because the truth is, the fear is going to be there. The fear will not ever go away. Your relationship to it will, right? It won't have that much power anymore. Okay, so now we're into the fourth strategy, which is technique for difficult conversation. Okay, so this is how I want you to start seeing difficult conversations. I want you to start to see them as opportunities. Okay. So much of the time, what we do is we think of like the worst possible scenario when it comes to asking for what we need, sharing what we need. And I know that I'm speaking generally here, but this is really talking to like conversations you need to have with colleagues, conversations you need to have with, your boss. They can be difficult conversations around, remote work or going back into the office. They can be conversations around COVID. They can be conversations around finances. They can be conversations around, health issues, too much work, like too little work, whatever it might be, right? But starting to see these conversations not as something to shy away from or something to fear, but as opportunities for you and for them, right? Again, helping yourself and the other suffer less. So with difficult conversations, the word to remember is soften. Okay, so it's the word you can say when you're in heated moments or when you're in that, the place of talking yourself out of making change, right? And so you can say to yourself, soften, so that your whole body just softens. But really, this is the practice that you'll use, which is noticing the sensation in the body, which we talked about before. Owning your suffering, which is really talking to yourself differently, because you're no longer talking to yourself in a way where you're rejecting yourself or you're hurting yourself, but you're saying, you are hurting right now. Like you are sad right now. And like you are feeling taken advantage of right now. And you are feeling misunderstood and you are feeling very confused. And it's like, I'm here and it's okay. Right. So you start owning your suffering. You start talking to yourself differently. Then you focus on the present moment. And really, what are my hands doing? What are my feet doing? So that you get out of the distraction, which is the fear, which becomes that big monster in those stories, right? So that then you can just take a deep breath and then you can turn towards the person or the group of people or, the person that you're talking to, and you can actually see them as somebody that you can have a conversation with, right? Somebody that you respect, or that you care for, or that you want to be kind to, or that you want to be supportive of, or, you know, you want to have a good relationship with, you want to collaborate with, you want to find a way to make it work. And then you notice what's needed, meaning you're really paying attention to what to say, right? Like, what is actually necessary to say here. So sensation in the body, the big mistake that people make really is ignoring the body. And the body is our cue, right? When we talked about resetting the pattern, that's really your cue to reset your pattern, is the sensation in the body. So we really want to start to pay attention to those sweaty palms and the chest beating, and, you know, the like feeling, like the vomity feeling, you know, owning our own suffering. What happens is we pretend that we are not suffering, right? Like, we pretend that we are okay and that we are fine, and it's no big deal. And so in the moment, nobody is there for us. And we need to step up and be the one there for us, to be able to see us and to be able to say, wow, you are being really underappreciated right now. I feel that. And maybe that's okay, and maybe it's not okay, right? Depending on your circumstance. And then we want to focus on the present moment. And the issue that sometimes happens is that we can't access the present moment, especially in difficult conversations, because we get so flustered, because we get stuck in that stress response where, you know, the cortisol is just pumping through our body and our heart beats really fast. And when that happens, we don't have access to ourselves to make decisions, to feel clear, like to feel any clarity, right? And so if we can't access the present moment, then anytime we are in a difficult conversation, we will likely just shut down. We will likely stop talking. We will likely say things we don't mean, you know, because we're not able to actually access ourselves to see, how do I want to show up right now, right? And then we want to take a breath, because the rhythm of these conversations is really important, because they often go very quickly. And sometimes, I mean, I remember being in a meeting with, when I worked at the publishing house I was talking about, I remember being in a meeting with the publisher, and it was like, I would walk out of there and be so confused because I had no idea what just happened. It was like I was there, but when I left, it was like I didn't remember anything, because I was just in full on protection mode, because everything was going so quickly, right? If in those moments when I learned that I could slow the moment down, that I didn't have to match the rhythm, that I could create my own rhythm, that made it so much easier for me to be able to take a breath, for me to be able to access the present moment, and then for me to actually express myself, no matter what the reaction was, right? And then once you're able to access yourself, you can turn your eyes toward the other person, and you see them as somebody who's not the enemy. But often what we do is we see that person as the enemy, right? And so our work in these moments, which can be really difficult, is to pull the blame away, right? Is to like just put the blame on the shelf and just, can I just see this person as a person, right? Like as somebody that I can have like a decent conversation with, right? And then notice what's needed is really the issue there is that we don't know why we're talking, right? And so if we don't know why we're talking, if we have no purpose to our interactions, then every time we're just going to be let down somehow, right? Because we have no guideline to follow. And they just end up going towards instinct. And instinct is great when we can, trust ourselves and it's working. though instinct isn't so great when we see patterns that we've seen over and over again happening over and over again because we're going based off of instinct, right? So I want to just touch on obstacles here that prevent us kind of from using these strategies. And again, fear is like the biggest one, right? Fear of what other people will think, right? Like I won't be relatable. They'll think I'm selfish. People won't like me. People will think I'm mean. They'll think I don't take my work seriously, right? Anytime we make a change in the way that we're showing up, fear comes in, right? Perception, like what other people will think of us comes in. You know, I have one student who really is like being a very good student of her calendar, and she is only opening up, 3 hours each day for people to schedule calls. And her fear is that people are going to think that she is lazy and that she isn't capable, or she's not efficient and she's not doing her job, though she's doing her job great, right? But it's the perception that other people have that can prevent her from having less, as opposed to keeping her calendar completely open. And so by the time, it's 6 p.m., she's been in meetings from 8 a.m., back-to-back meetings. So starting to think about what are these obstacles, right? Resistance. It won't work for me. I've had conversations before. I've tried to, talk to this person before, and it just goes round and round, and we have the same type of conversation. Past experiences, right? We've had the same conversation. Why would I try doing the same thing again? I mean, you won't be doing the same thing because you'll be doing it differently, which is why it will change. But the fear is that even by showing up differently, it's going to be the same outcome, right? Uncertainty, worries about being liked, unacknowledged fears, right? All of these things have a way of preventing us. So I want you to just share with me in the chat. So you want to make things better at work, but what is holding you back, right? Regrets. Organizational roadblocks, ruminating. Fear of how you'll be perceived for sure. Feel like I'll get fired. Yep. So all of these, right? What can we do with all of these fears? Fear of conflict in views and ideas, fear, preconceived thoughts of others. Can we talk to them? Right? Like, can we talk to these fears? Like, can you talk to these fears right now? Right? And see if maybe they're telling you where you need to go. Right? Fear of having my own words twisted against me. Yeah. So there's all these things that can hold us back, right? And so our work is starting to talk to ourselves differently. Our work is starting to slow everything down so that we can move ourselves into, the place where we feel like we have control over our words, over ourselves, so that we move into this place of, making empowered decisions that work for us, right? And it's truly about learning how to become friends with that fear, right? Practicing moving your attention. And it's seeing when I'm sitting in that fear and how it's preventing me, and instead seeing, can I look at this differently? Can I look at this fear as a cue to move me forward, right? In whatever the situation may be. So to really like learn how to create new patterns that we're talking about, I'm just going to put it out there is that the Cane intentional communication training practice or communication practice, it's really a strategy, right? For those of you who want to feel less fear and more confident, definitely in the workplace. It teaches you, these are strategies that I gave you today, but there's a whole practice that walks you through how do you actually get to the place where you have difficult conversations, and how do you then feel confident within difficult conversations? How do you take care of yourself and talk to yourself differently so that you're not allowing the same issues to creep up again and again, right? So when students come to us, I know this is like a beautiful one with the squiggles. I like it. But when most students come to us, they come to us when they're kind of stuck around here, right? Like someone says something or something happens that upsets them, and then they're reactive, right? And they're just like all over, and they lash out, they get passive aggressive, they get dismissive, they dodge, right? They just react right away. Or people come to us when they're stuck kind of here where someone says something that really bothers them. They know that they want to say something about it, or they know that they want to say something about something, right? It doesn't have to be somebody says something. It could be like an action. It could be an event. It could be a want, right? But the idea is that they know they want to say something about it, but they have no idea what that is, right? So they just decide to just like let it go. And they know that it'll come up again and again, but they just they don't want to deal with it because they don't know how, right? Or people come to us when somebody says something or something happens and they react. And then after they've reacted or after they've said something, they're just stuck in their head for days about it, right? Like just beating themselves up over what they said, just feeling terrible, like just ruminating, right? And what happens is that most don't make it a priority. Like they make this a low priority on their list. Like they make communication a low priority. And what they do instead is they don't really do much of anything, right? They like talk themselves out of working on interacting differently. And so they're like, I just need to stop being so emotional. It's really not that big of a deal. Like I can figure it out. Right? And so they invest in books and they sign up for like one-off workshops, or they go and they get another certificate, or they get another certification, or they start to look for another job. And the truth is that unless you really learn a practice of communication, you're not going to you will continue to experience the same discomfort that brought you here today, right? And that's because communication is the seed. It's the seed of it all, really. It's how you interact with yourself dictates the way you interact with others, and how you interact with others changes the way you live in the world, right? So instead of learning the practice, most people, they rely on the HAP method, which is really like the hope and pray method, right? And that's not a lot of action. It's not responsibility, and it's off the gut instincts that we were talking about before. And I know that I'm like making light of this a little bit, but I just get frustrated watching people feel stuck and trapped when they can just follow a practice to really help them feel more at ease, right? And you really can't change the way that you're communicating without up-leveling your support in communication, right? Because especially if you've been doing it the same way for so long, you have to do something different, or you're going to have the same conversations again and again. So just take a minute and you can share in the chat, or you can write it down by yourself, but what are, that old outdated patterns costing you at work? What's not knowing how to respond and expressing yourself costing you at work? Or what's not being able to, ask for what you need costing you at work? Or, insert the issue that you're having. Because I'm sure the issue, like the issues in terms of enjoying your work will, if you do like, in my mind, I'm thinking of like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, but this would be like the 7 degrees of communication, because I bet it would come back to communication. Okay. So the training, I just want to share, it's really for you if you're putting off conversations, if you're lashing out, if you're receiving specific feedback about your communication, if things are not really getting better. So in work relationships, these are just some of the things that I pulled from some of our recent students. But in work relationships, really what the practice will teach you how to do, it's going to teach you how to slow down. It's going to teach you how to really pay attention to the sensation in the body so that you can prevent yourself from reacting in the same way, and you end up able to choose a different way to connect, which is really speaking in a kind, honest, and helpful way, more conscious, concise, and clear, right? And being able to see the other person as somebody that you can truly have a conversation with, express yourself, and you move into the place where you know how to lead a conversation, as opposed to being what may feel just like on the passive side of the conversation, right? So, meeting, I mean, I don't know if you can read through these, but, just we have a lot of testimonials. We have a lot of people who have gone through the training program. It works. And, I have more testimonials, but I want to share a little bit about just what the training program is. So it's online training videos where you really are walked through the entire practice of the Cane intentional communication practice. And you really learn what I mentioned before, right? You're really learning how to slow down. You're really learning how to be in difficult interactions and know how to access yourself so that you can express yourself. You really learn actually how to be present in conversations and how to listen, how to, work through the fear of asking for what it is that you want and asking for what it is that you need. You have a one-to-one onboarding call with your instructor to just kind of get you off and running. And you get my books, How to Communicate Like a Buddhist, Talk to Yourself Like a Buddhist, How to Meditate Like a Buddhist. We go through those in the training program, along with the training workbook. There's weekly calls with your instructor. So you meet once a week, and you're really going over where you are in the lessons, the challenges you're facing, any questions that you have. And it's phenomenal. Like, the group calls are wonderful. I know some of you who are on here have been in the training program, and I'm sure that you can also agree, but the group calls, you learn so much from one another. The support that you get in there is just beyond. And it really is a way for you to, start to really live into the practice and implement the practice. You get one-to-one milestone calls. So these are 4 one-to-one calls with your instructor, where you're really diving into specifically what's coming up for you with your communication, with things that are happening for you in the workplace, and getting the practices and strategies and tools that you need in real time. There's also, journaling is a big part of this training program. So you'll be asked to do a little bit more journaling within the one-to-one work, because, so much of this is really learning how to become comfortable within discomfort so that you can move through that fear, right? Meditation is a big part of this training program. It's not religious meditation in any way. This is secular meditation, in the sense that we're really using this prescriptively for our communication. And you will be prescribed specific meditations throughout the training program by your instructor, depending on kind of what lesson you're in, and what things are coming up for you. And you get feedback on assignments. So assignments really isn't the right word here, but what I would say is, like, if you have conversations that are coming up, we ask you to submit the conversations to your instructor to get feedback, to see if you're on the right track, if there's anything that maybe needs to be cut, if you're explaining too much, if you're, making it difficult for the other person to get what you have to say, or if it's coming across in a compassionate, kind way. And, feedback on emails. We've had people who have had, talks coming up with the president of their companies and needing guidance on how to direct those conversations. We've had people who have had to lead mass layoffs and how to have those conversations, right? And so, we've really seen it all. We have a community group. So those who are going through the training program, it's just for those going through the training program. And it's really where you get to post questions and you get feedback. It's just another place to get support and just see all the students who are in the training. And then there's a 4 months training, 4 months check-in after the training program to see how everything's going. It's really important for us to do because what we know is that those who go through the training program, this isn't something that like you learn and leave. This is something that truly becomes your way of interacting in the world because it's a practice. And so it's not like, it's like swimming, you learn it once and then you can do it anytime. So it really does stick with you. We've not had one person who's not using the practice after 4 months. It's 14 weeks. So really you're looking at like the first 3 weeks are your foundation weeks. Then we really get into the practice and implementation piece. And our goal is to, like this quote is really our goal, give a person a fish, feed them for a day, teach a person to fish, feed them for a lifetime. And our goal is to feed you for like to teach you how to fish so that you can feed yourself for a lifetime, right? What you're getting is everything to start enjoying your work life more, tools and practices to become less reactive and more responsive, work through the fear of conversation, speak consciously, clearly, and concisely, using silence as a way to foster collaboration, becoming more confident in your interactions, reducing stress, overwhelm, and burnout. You're getting the one-to-one onboarding call, weekly group coaching, books and training workbook, 4 one-to-one calls, private community group, and then a 4-month check-in after the training program. So if there's any fear here, I'll let you know that it's basically telling you that this is your opportunity to change, I think, and to do something different. So if you want to apply, please do. Applications, we're taking applications now and enrollment now. So the next group will start the 7th of February. So that's coming up. And Cheyenne put the link to apply in the chat, but it's intentionalcommunicationtrainingapply.com. And these are just, some testimonials. I can go through a little of them for you guys, but if you have questions, please put them in the chat so that I can answer them directly for you. But when Mickey came to us, she was struggling a lot with overreactivity and oversensitivity. And, through the training program, she really shifted from feeling like this petulant child to feeling like a wise adult. In her relationships, Rashmi, she became so much more calm and centered, taking so much more of that space and time to be able to express herself, which she didn't have before. And also just that gentleness with herself now, that if she has a slip up or if she does fall off, it's not a forever thing. It really is, a celebratory moment to be able to say, you didn't act in the way that you wanted to. That's okay. Let's come back and we'll begin again, right? Francie, she really changed her self-talk throughout the training program. And it really, made life so much easier for her. And it made it so that she was actually able now to ask for help and speak up and express herself. And Kevin, he was really kind of stuck in like the old patterns way of thinking. And so the training really helped him be able to, slow down, start to shift the way, like the negative self-talk, so that he became more patient, more tempered, and not needing to, like control other people and fix them. And yeah, he's great. Miss Kevin. And Kathy, Miss Kathy. So yeah, Kathy changed a lot throughout the training program. She just became so much happier, more joyful. Like she says here, she is happier than she's been since her childhood. And she really shifted the way that she was communicating. and it changed her world. Eugenia, the same thing. She learned difficult conversations was the big one for her. She had a lot of work issues that she was dealing with that brought her to the training program. And she was able to work them out because we have great formulas in terms of difficult conversations. And once she started implementing them, she saw how they worked, and it's kind of a no-brainer from there once you see that it works. And again, all this is doable. It's all totally doable. I've done it, right? I mean, I'm your like patient zero here. I still do it every single day. And you know, Cheyenne's done it. She's gone through the training program. Like you can't fail at this. You can't do it wrong. And we don't allow that to happen, really. It's not a course where you just sign up and then you're on your own. It's really, we're kind of in your face a lot because we love you and we want to make sure that you get the outcome that you want. So yeah. So what questions do you guys have for me? Any questions? I'm just going to look to the chat that you have about the training program at all. But yeah, we're opening up applications and enrolling for the next group to start the 7th of February. Okay. I'm not seeing questions. Okay, let me know. Was this helpful? Was this a helpful workshop for all of you? I want to make sure. And also, yes, good. Yay. Great. Okay. All right. Well, I didn't know what to expect, but this was wonderful. Oh, good. Thanks. Is it Dana? Well, I don't know how I would know. Dana, am I pronouncing it correctly? Dana? You unmuted. You can tell me.
It's Dana.
Okay, good. Dana.
It's Dana.
Good.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. I like making sure. Okay. So then we'll go ahead and end with just a little bit of breathing to close us out, and I'll pull an intention card. Let me just make sure I have them close by, because I love my intention cards, but I don't see them. Oh, they're there. Okay. So let's just close with a little grounding. Okay. Go ahead and close your eyes with me. And just settle into the space. And we'll start by taking 3 long, slow, deep breaths. Inhaling slowly and fully through the nostrils and exhaling deeply. And let your breathing return to its natural rhythm. And put your attention on your feet and just the energy underneath your feet. Maybe it's tingling. Maybe there's throbbing. And see now about moving this energy around the feet, up the shins and calves. And you might see it as like swirling around the calves. Maybe it's just a light, maybe it's just a sensation, but seeing it move up over the knees now, the thighs, around the pelvis, the stomach, the diaphragm, the chest, down around the arms and around the neck, and now around the head. And see now if you can imagine almost like a hole opening up at the top of the head. and pour all that energy inside the body. And it may feel like a lot, so see if you can just move it around. Just spread it out back down toward your feet, down towards your arms and legs, around your chest. And close the hole at the top. And just take a deep breath in. And on the exhale, let out a sigh. And one more deep inhale. And exhale with a sigh. And just sit in the stillness. And take a deep breath. You can circle your wrists, circle your shoulders up, back and down, circle your head. And when you're ready, you can blink your eyes open. Just notice the shapes and colors around you and come back. So I hope that was a little energizing for you guys and comfortable. A little boost of energy. All right, I'm going to pick an intention for us and then we'll say goodbye. Aw, that's great. Thankful. I don't know if you can read it. Write, text, or verbally express your gratitude. Well, I'm just going to verbally express my gratitude for all of you today and to say thank you so much for being here with me and showing up for yourselves, for your colleagues, for your employees, for your employers, for your friends, your loved ones, all of it. I really, truly believe that changing the way that you communicate changes your life. And I think that if you're here, you're just getting strategies to help you move more towards enjoying everything. So I'm thankful for you and I appreciate all of you. If you have any questions, please let me know, let Cheyenne know. And I'll send out an email with the replay so that you guys have it. And I'll see about attaching the slides to it as well for you guys to have. All right. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Mwah. We'll connect soon. Bye-bye.